celebrating 17 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Candace Viox.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. This year I'm reminding people, if you're called to do something, do it. If you're inspired to do something, do it. If you want to do something, do it. It's possible. And that's what this show is all about. Great stories about great people whose lives prove that anything is possible. Candace Viox is my guest today. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was reading your bio about growing up in Southern California,
Yes.
San Diego, which is absolutely fantastic. I was on a trip to San Diego once. What's that really rich part of San Diego?
I grew up in Huntington Beach.
Okay.
So San Diego was where we went for vacation.
Right, that's where but Southern Cal is just
beautiful.
phenomenal. You grew up in kind of an idyllic setting. Talk a little bit about that.
So my parents adopted me. My birth mother was 13 when she got pregnant with me. And so my mom and dad always raised me with I was chosen. They got to pick me out of all the babies in the world. They didn't get stuck with their baby. They got to pick me. My whole life I was raised being special.
Did you feel that?
Oh, God, yes. Yes. There was never an issue of anger or resentment towards my birth mother. I did eventually want to find her, and I did. I did get some answers, and I was, if anything, more grateful after I met my birth mother. I went back to my mom and dad and said, thank you so much for saving me, because her life was very hard and difficult. But I did find out that I had 3 siblings, all different fathers, of course. But I was able to meet them and able to kind of fill some voids that I had in my heart from being adopted. But, I was raised in the church. My dad was always very active in ministry. So was my mom. They used to clean the church back when I was a little girl. And my dad was an usher. So, hanging out at church bonfires with Conrad playing the guitar and always going to youth camps and things like that. I had a very blessed life, and I'm very thankful.
So did you believe that blessed life as a beginning meant it should be smooth sailing from here on out?
Well, I always knew God had something unique for me. Everybody always said I never fit in. I was always loudmouth. I was a leader. I was always starting things at church, whether it be a youth choir, because I wanted to sing with the big kids and they wouldn't let us. Whether it be at camp, getting everybody together and convincing everybody to go to Yosemite and get in the tubes in the water. So I was always a leader. God always gave me this people laugh about it now, but a mouth. I love talking with people. I love sharing with people my story. And it ends up being just a catapult for what God called me to do from beginning of surviving, could have been an abortion in 1976.
Talk to me about that.
Well, in the time, in 1976, when I was born, abortion was still legal in a few states, not all the states. And so where I was conceived in Louisiana, my birth mother traveled to California. I was told she wanted to go to California because her mother wanted to have an abortion. She tells me she never wanted to have an abortion, so I don't really know what the story was of why she traveled from Louisiana to California. But I just thank God that he brought her to California, because obviously my parents were able to save me.
Saved you for what? And when did you know, I've been saved to do something specific?
Well, I think during my life, I feel like the enemy was always trying to take me out. Whether it be illness that I had to deal with, that my mom prayed over me and I was miraculously healed. Then I also went through a time of great trouble when my parents were having some issues and I tried to commit suicide, and I was not successful. And then moving here to Tennessee when I was 16 years old and junior high school, and having to start over in a new state in the middle of high school, I rebelled, and I didn't want to have anything to do with God. I ended up getting pregnant at 19 myself. So I was always dealing with the enemy trying to eliminate what God had for me. And it's been a struggle, but I've gotten through every bit of it, and God has blessed me and protected me the entire way.
This is Candace Viox. She's my guest today on Anything is Possible. More in a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
I still have a tumor on the lower left side of my brain, and I tell people all the time, I live my life with God will take me home when He's ready.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill. This is Candace Viox. Let's talk first about illness.
So back in 2012, we'll have to digress a little bit in 2011, so ask me about that. But in January 2012, I survived a brain aneurysm. I had a brain bleed, and I was at UT Hospital for 24 days. And I still have a tumor on the lower left side of my brain. And I tell people all the time, I live my life with God will take me home when He's ready. I don't live my life in fear. I know He could heal it. I don't know why it's still there, but it is. And I will eventually I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. So when God's done with me, He'll take me home.
And that's just your outlook on it.
Absolutely, on everything.
Talk about what brought you to the brink of suicide.
Well, at the time, I was going through some things with my family, and I knew my parents had the house up for sale, and they wanted to move me to Tennessee. I also, again, when you're 13, 14, 15, I was very angry at some issues that happened with my parents. And I took that as maybe a cry out for attention. And they were busy trying to sort through some things that they had chosen to do. And again, I'm a kid. So I just tried it and took way too many pills. My Uncle Danny was the one who found me in the room. My mom and dad were able to rush in and get me the things that I needed to get me safe. And at that point, I knew that I needed help, and so did my parents. And they got me the help that I needed.
You said, though, that you got to a point where you turned God off.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk
I do
about
that all
that.
the time. So I see my relationship with my father as a child and a father. I don't see God as this miraculous thing being way off. I regularly have conversations with Him. I treat Him as a dad, if you will. So whenever things happen in my life, He can fix it. He can change it. He can intervene. He can drop He can part the Red Sea. He can raise the dead. Why, God, am I going through this? So it took me a long time and going through a lot of things. Eventually, it was the death of my mother that was unexpected in 2011. I was going through a divorce, and after 15 years of marriage, I had four foster kids, three foster kids that I adopted, and then my daughter that I had at 19. So I had 4 kids, and I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through moving, having to figure out if I can even do this as a single mom with 4 children. And then that happened in March, and then in May, my mom's dead. There was no illness. She wasn't sick. It wasn't cancer. There wasn't some prolonged thing. Yeah, she had a few issues and she had some spouts with the doctor, but there was never your mother's going to die soon. She has a terminal disease. You need to prepare. It was she went to Park West Hospital and never came home. So when that happened, my life spun out of control. In that moment, I felt like I'd lost my husband. I'd lost my family as I knew it. Now I had lost my mother, the only person in my life that could get me through a divorce at the time, I thought. And so I was lost, and I was so mad and angry at God. He could have fixed it. He could have healed her. That's how I was raised. You pray and ask anything in His name, and He shall do it. And I never really understood that God doesn't work on my timetable, and God doesn't do it the way that I think that He should. So at the time, you couldn't have told me that I was going to get through it. So what I did is I would drop my kids off at CAK like a good little mommy does, and I would go get drunk every day at the bars. I would sit at the bars and drink, and this again turns into the self-destructiveness. He can fix it. He can do it. He could have healed, and He could have done, and He didn't. So I had to figure out how to get through that. And
you were mad.
Oh, I was so mad. The last place I was going to go was church. I didn't want to hear Dr. McGinnis give me a hug and tell me that I was going to get through this. I wasn't going to go to Park West, that's my home church, and praise and worship this Christ that somehow didn't heal my mom. So that happened in May of 2011. And remember, January 2012, I was in UT Hospital surviving a brain aneurysm. I was in a coma for 24 hours before they could stop the bleeding. So at this point, I'm asking myself, wow, the enemy really wants to kill me because his job is to steal, kill, and destroy. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, lost my husband, lost my mom. Now I lost my health. And I remember going to California in July 2012 and raising my hands up and asking God, fine, what are you taking next? I don't care anymore. I yelled, I screamed, I cussed out God. He's a big dad, he can take it. Called him every name in the book. I was so angry, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And this was about 14 months of just a downhill spiral for my life. And I realized, I walked down Huntington Beach Pier, I'll never forget it. My kids were all at the fire pits, and I was with some friends from California that were mentoring me and loving me and just helping me get through this difficult time. And I didn't care about anything. Didn't care about my life. Didn't care if I lived. I was done. And I walked down to the bottom of the water's edge, and I remember falling on my knees. I couldn't cry anymore. I couldn't scream anymore. I couldn't even speak anymore. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, are you done yet? That was it. Are you done yet? And all of a sudden I realized I have 4 kids to raise. I'm 36 years old. What am I going to do? Am I going to just kill myself and leave my kids to fend for themselves? Or do I need to get back home to Tennessee and figure out what's the next chapter? What's God going to do with my life? Why am I still here? Why have I survived this 14 months of hell? So I got on an airplane on Sunday. I grabbed my kids. We headed back to Tennessee. And I sat on the couch and I looked up and I said, fine, what do I do? What do I do next? I'm going through this divorce. I'm a single mom. I've got a budget now. I don't have money just flying everywhere. What do I do next? Holy Spirit said, go back to school. Really? Go back to school. 36 years old. I'm going to go back to school. So I start kind of having this dialect because I told you I talk to God like he's a dad and not a bean. And so I signed up at Pellissippi, and I never forget my first day of class. I walked in and I said, I have no idea why I'm here. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. God told me to go back to school, and I'm really good at hospitality and cooking and loving people and catering, and I may want to travel and work at a hotel. I don't know. So I said, I'm just here trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I went back to school.
I mean, what a what a powerful experience you were having with God. What an authentic experience. So you go back to school, you decide hospitality. Did you have any concept that you were going to open up a business?
No, so that's kind of the fun part. My friend Bruce still has the napkin. So during that time, I told you that I spent most times at bars, okay? That was where I could talk to a bartender and they wouldn't judge me. That's where I could go and cry and laugh or speak to strangers and not deal with it. I didn't want to go to church because everybody was, whoa, I'm sorry about your mom, or, are you doing okay? Or, again, I didn't want to have anything to do with that, but I found solace in bars. So I'm sitting there with my friend Bruce at Bonefish Grill, and I drew out on a napkin a U shape. And I said, oh my God, I'm supposed to be Christ-like. Christ told us to go into the world and preach the gospel. In Matthew 9 through 13, Christ also is seen eating and drinking and hanging out with the tax collectors and the sinners and the prostitute and Christ is hanging out with the rogues, okay? He's not liking the church folk. He walked in and turned all the tables upside down, and it was the Pharisees that were mad that he was eating and drinking with those sinners. And the thought came to me, what if I opened a bistro, a lounge, a bar, where people could sit and talk and meet, no judgment, I don't care what they're going through, but you know what? They're going to get love. They're going to get scripture that's boldly hung in my bathroom. They're going to walk in there and have a bad day, and they're going to look up and know that God's got their back. They're going to have a believer that's sitting at a bar every day that carries her Bible in her car. And I will pray with them. I will share God's love with them. I will encourage them. It's unlike any bar in Knoxville. And when you come in there, you get love, and you get the love of Christ, no judgment.
We got to talk about this. This is fantastic. More of the story of Candace Viox in just a moment on Anything is Possible.
Coming up,
Yes, church zealots and people write me nasty emails and send me random letters. I can't believe that you promote Jesus and you sell wine. But I decided to combat it and start a Bible study.
So did you get any pushback?
Oh, God, yes. Are you
when
kidding
you said,
me? Jesus at a bar? Are you kidding me? I still get it.
I'll have a Bud Light in the Bible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So talk to me about that, taking that leap of faith to say, I'm going to start a bistro. We're going to have wine. We're going to let people come as they are. It's not going to be overt.
Yeah.
What happened?
I had to go back into my Bible, and I started seeing my Jesus hung out with the rogues, and my Jesus had dinner with, my Jesus ended up picking disciples and followers that were going to turn around and actually be part of putting him to death. Look at Judas. So Christ still was friends with them. So Christ always hung out with the rogues. And so, I just don't fit in religion. I don't fit in church.
Did you have any background in this kind of business other than being a customer?
No, that's what was so amazing about it. It's kind of like I was telling people, imagine when God told Moses, you're going to go up to the Pharaoh and you're going to demand my people go. And after the 9th time, did Moses get a little frustrated because God still hadn't delivered the people? And then after he actually does it, he still gets chased to the Red Sea and has to part the Red Sea? I mean, come on. So God always asks people to do crazy stuff. He asked Noah to build a boat that animals and elephants were going to get on. So the more crazy that God calls you to do, for me, the more inspiring it is because he wants to get all the glory. This isn't about me. I just did what he told me to do. And now I have a clientele that's 85% women. I have a safe place for Working Women Wednesday, so women business owners can come every Wednesday at 5:30 and share their gifts and talents with the community. And yeah, there were people that put crosses all over my windows. There are people that rip signs off of my bathroom. I've got religious zealots I deal with all the time. But you know what? It's ultimately up to God. He told me to do this. I did it, and he's blessing me.
Talk to me about what you've learned, because possibility is rooted in faith. Mm-hmm. I like to say that winners do the one thing that losers never do. They try.
Right.
And you only try if you believe. Mm-hmm. And so one of the most important things you have to protect is your faith. Mm-hmm. That thing that makes you get up every day and try. Yep. Talk to me about what you've learned about faith and possibility, and what's your message to our audience today?
Well, what's funny is you're right. I've gone through a lot with this restaurant. I'm a female business owner in Knoxville and Farragut. Most of the restaurateurs in Knoxville are male, except for Holly and maybe a couple more. So I have to deal with a lot of things. Yes, church zealots and people write me nasty emails and send me random letters. I can't believe that you promote Jesus and you sell wine. But I decided to combat it and start a Bible study. So on Monday, every Monday at 2 o'clock, I have a Bible study with a group of ladies at a bar with our Bibles. And so I just constantly stay rooted in what God called me to do, knowing, is this a ministry that I'm going to start in other communities? Am I going to do another Water into Wine in Nashville? Am I going to do another Water into Wine in Chattanooga? I'm praying and asking God about that right now, because it's more than a restaurant. It's a ministry. And God called me to do it, and I have no idea what he's up to. But it's funny, the name. When we moved here from California, we moved to Baptist town, okay? And my mom said, you know what? If Christ's first miracle was turning water into wine, we can drink it. So I named the restaurant in homage to my mom and my Aunt Bonnie, because they were the ones that made it very clear that Christ's first miracle could have been anything, but he chose to turn water into wine.
I bet you they are smiling down on you.
I think so too.
And I think what's amazing about your story is when you have one thing after another, and it starts stacking up on you, the weight of it is tremendous because you carry that weight as you were just trying to do the day, right? This is my story. You carry it as you're doing the day.
Right.
But what I love about God and what I love about possibility is, where do we find that little piece of faith that allows you to try one more day, right?
Yeah.
Because you might be just a day away from
Right.
that breakthrough, that
It
turning
was the
point.
Holy Spirit for me,
Right?
Halloran. It really was.
Yeah.
It was the strength, the whisper in the ear, the friend that would call and check on me, the text message I would get from my dad. You know, God works through other people. God works through music. It'd be a song that come on the radio. Yeah.
And I don't believe that any of that is just happenstance.
No, I don't either.
think I'm amazed at how, we have these God winks or coincidences where something happens on Tuesday that makes you ready for Thursday, and Monday you thought you were ready to check out, right?
Absolutely.
So I think what's powerful about your story is that hard was met with grace,
Absolutely.
which brings you here,
Yeah.
here.
Right.
So thank you for being here
I
today.
appreciate you listening to me today. Thank you.
Candace Viox on Anything is Possible. We'll see you next time.